It is 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, welcome to 3 and Out. So much to get to here on the show. We'll hear from Jamey Chadwell, Coastal Carolina's head coach and 2020 AP College Football Coach of the Year, and they were certainly the darlings of the 2020 season. And we'll hear from him about his team going into 2021 and certainly set to be a top 25 football program here in 2021 as well. So he'll join us coming up at the top of next hour. We'll look at name, image, likeness as it's before Congress now with Mark Emmert getting there in front of Congress today as well. We'll look at what happened there in D.C. with that. But obviously it was all Philadelphia last night with the Hawks 76ers. Braves taking on the Phillies last night. Braves win it 9-5 with a late inning rally at 500 for the first time all season. Dare I say they go for above 500 later today. Don't want to jinx it, but it could possibly happen. But again, a so-so to pretty poor outing by Drew Smyly. I don't say that just for pitching, but his fielding was pretty terrible last night as well. But the Braves end up with a dub, and I guess that's what matters.
Yeah, and Kevin, the whole thing about it is, I mean, that eighth inning was kind of freaky, right? I mean, you look at the fact that I like how, they said this pitcher has never gave up any run against the Braves ever since it, and then, he kind of got away from him. I mean, now, these umps, they got a hard job, right, Kevin? Like, I mean, I'm saying that when Ronald Acuna, he slammed his bat down when obviously he got the base hit. That was not because obviously he didn't think it was a strike. You know how frustrating it got to be to want to, say something to a ref, but I don't speak English. I'll be like, I want to let this ref have it, which probably a good thing for him because he can say whatever he wants. But the Braves were very impressive. I think that what happened yesterday with me when I watched the Braves, Kevin, is you showed it. They score runs in bunches like that. Like, they'll have a 7-run inning, and then but usually they be on the losing end of those games because they usually trying to fight their way back into a game. But yesterday was very, very impressive. Obviously, everybody's going crazy because Philadelphia got Joel Embiid and nobody can stop him. When he was an MVP candidate, and that shows how good of a team the Hawks are when people are saying they're going to be playing scrappy, back against the wall. It's not back against the wall in game 2, but it was a good showing by Philadelphia. I mean, the game kind of got away at the end a little bit, but very, very impressed by the Braves, and still think those Hawks got a lot of good games left in them.
Yeah, BJ, I thought, again, last night, literally across the parking lot from each other, two pretty big games taking place. The Braves kind of remind you of the comeback kids that they've been under Brian Snitker, where it looked pretty rough for 7 innings, and all of a sudden Austin Riley ties it up with the blast, and then they bust it wide open and come up with a big win, maybe seeing some of that turning point with Atlanta here in terms of late inning heroics.
Yeah, great resiliency and a big win. I agree with you. That 8th inning where you really had the offense turn it up a notch was very important. And it was a great bounce back, like I mentioned, guys, because, right, you're winning. Shane Green comes in. And probably, if we're being honest, we all knew there was going to be an adjustment period for Shane Green, who got a late start on the season. First batter he faces, home run, gives up, a couple of runs, and now the Braves are losing. And not only are you looking around going, oh, man, we just had the lead and we lost it, but a guy that we brought in that we thought was going to make us better, and clearly he is moving forward, but just kind of the shock and awe of the moment of here's Shane Green up, now we're losing. It would have been easy to just kind of get frustrated and sort of lose your energy, but the team bounced back, had a huge inning in the 8th, and I thought it was a really gut check win. I thought it was a really important win. And Kevin, if the Braves win tonight, they have a winning record for the first time this season.
You should. I feel bad that you even brought that.
There it is. Kevin already said it, right? Kevin,
I did, but I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like we've talked about it so much on the shows. Like, hey, have a chance to get back to 500. Nope. Have a chance to get back to 500. Nope. And I hate to even speak that into existence, but hopefully they'll get it done tonight. Atlanta wins game 1, loses game 2 last night. A lot of people are saying, oh, wow, the real 76ers showed up. But the way I look at it is, hey, mission accomplished. Much like against the Knicks, go on the road for 2 games, you need 1. They got 1, and now you come back to Atlanta to try to see if you can take control of the series again.
I think they will. It's always going to be about Philadelphia, right? It's always going to be about what they're doing and what Atlanta isn't doing. I mean, if all things were even, which they are, and we're not just catering to one team because they got Embiid and Simmons. I mean, BJ, this is a very, very even matchup. I mean, the whole thing about it is one team bounced back because you got an unstoppable force named Joel Embiid. You can't stop this dude. But I do think that this Hawks team gets better. I think Nate McMillan, to me, is the mastermind as far as like making sure these guys understand, really go back, watch tape, how they can adjust. These aren't blowouts. It ain't like Phil. It ain't like Brooklyn and in the freaking in Boston. Those games be over in the second quarter. It be over. I just think that when you're a young team trying to find your way, trying to, really like always scratching and clawing for just respect in the NBA when, that's just, I don't know if you'll ever get out of Monaco. That's the Hawks. But the way people talking about Philly, you would have thought they was playing Brooklyn after the first game. Oh, man, they got to come out and win this second. Stephen A., they're going to lose a series if they lose game 2. So I think that Trey and Collins and Bogdanovich and those guys, I think what they're going to do, they're going to sit back and go, all right, we lost game 2. Lost game 2 against New York. Definitely a different team in Philly, BJ, Kevin. But they've been here before, right? They're in the second round. And I think that Trey and those guys, like Kevin said, yeah, could be playing with house money, but they have that, okay, if we lose, that's what we're supposed to be because we the Hawks. What happens when we push these guys to the brink? Because I think the last thing that Philly wants to do is let this go to 7. They don't want to do that because all the pressure's on them again. But I was impressed by Philly last night. Man, they came out, they played well, but it's only game 2. I do think Tricky Train, those guys, going to have a nice bounce back game come game 3.
Yeah, and I'm like you. Look, you tip your cap to Joel Embiid. He was spectacular, and he's one of the best players in the NBA, and he proved that last night. But I do think if you're in Atlanta, you're still if you are Atlanta, you're still in a really good spot. When you think about the NBA playoffs, the goal for any road underdog is to split the first 2. That's the goal. I mean, if you can do that, even if you don't do that, the series still has the potential to go chalk. But if you can get one early, you're in a spot where I think you have the upper hand. I mean, Atlanta has home court advantage now. They went to Philadelphia and won. And I think more so than even winning up there, I think you have the confidence that what you did in New York was the foundation, was the starting point. And now you know that you can play with anybody. Philadelphia is one of the most talented teams in the NBA. You know that you can play with them. And not only that, you know that you can pull away from them at times. I know game 1 got a little iffy, got a little serious down the stretch, but there were extended periods of that game where you were up 15, you were up 18. I think you were up 20 at the half. So you should be confident. You should feel good about playing at home. I think there should be an anticipation for game 3. Shout out to the 76ers. They were really good in game 2. You expect that. You expect a contending team to bounce back. But if you're Atlanta and you're in the second round of the playoffs, tied 1-1, coming back to the A, you are in a great spot.
Sure. And again, I think this is where you kind of find out where you stack up if you're Atlanta. Back home, favorable scenario. Can you take Philadelphia out of it and win some at home? And again, Embiid went off last night. We kind of figured that was going to happen. I think we even talked about, I think one of the questions on the show was, are the Hawks going to lose like we all think they're going to last night? Because it was almost assumed, yeah, they're not going to win tonight because, Philly's going to get fired up and there it is. But, by and large, they were in it until the fourth quarter when, 76ers heated up and started to pull away. But, I mean, where do you see them in this series? If Philadelphia comes to play, are the Hawks able to go toe-to-toe with that?
I think they are. I think we've seen it. And we give Philadelphia credit because they Philadelphia because of who they playing, right? If Philadelphia was playing Boston, we would be talking about like this. We talk about Philadelphia like they got this, incredible playoff experience. They don't. This is the first time Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid have been healthy for 2 seasons in a row. It used to be if one healthy, the other one isn't. Then the other will come back, the other one gets injured. But Joel Embiid is as good as advertised. I mean, this guy can flat out get it done. But now you got 2 games. All right, the first game, you still kind of assessing what we got, they win it. The second game, it kind of got away at the end, BJ. But I do think that something about Atlanta is these guys, I mean, do they got the chemistry of Brooklyn? No. Do they got the talent of Philly? No. But they still in the second round. So when you start talking about the way in which they play together, because basketball is one of those things to where as long as you ain't down by 15 with 5 minutes left, the game could be won. Well, once you know what's out there, I'm not going to exert all this energy when I know I got another game coming. But I'm very, very impressed. And I still think Atlanta is the most dangerous team in the playoffs because nobody expects them to do anything. And they're the reason why the Knickerbockers are at home watching.
Yeah, I think you should believe. I think you should take the floor confidently. And one good sign, look, it was a disappointing result, but I think one good sign was what you saw out of Danilo Gallinari, because you know what Trey's going to do. I think for the most part, you know what your big men are going to do, but you need some of those role players to step up. And Gallinari had 21 points. He also had 9 rebounds. So I think that's something to watch moving forward. Because you're going to need help from the wings rebounding against this team. If you can do that moving forward, I think that's a big advantage.
And again, Hawks come back to Atlanta, try to get some of that momentum back in the series. We've got plenty to get to here on the show, including name, image, likeness goes to Washington. That's right, Congress now hearing testimony on name, image, likeness. A lot of work trying to get done before some of these state laws go into effect on July 1. We'll look at that. Love to hear from you, your thoughts on that, 912-342-7184, or hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. It's 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We'll hear from Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina head football coach and 2020 AP College Football Coach of the Year, coming up top of next hour. But name, image, likeness goes to Congress. Today you had Mark Emmert there in front of Congress. Of course, July 1, several states, including this one in Georgia, have name, image, likeness laws set to go into effect without one from the NCAA. Which I really get the feeling would rather Congress put one into effect that they don't have to deal with. But Mark Emmert there looking for name, image, likeness, Title IX protections. Athletes are not employees. That's obviously important to the NCAA, and obviously safe harbor so the NCAA can't get sued. I mean, if there's anybody else looking out for self-interest, it all says it right there. Can't sue us. Athletes are not employees, but name, image, likeness, let's go for it. But again, the NCAA, according to Mark Emmert, is on pace to pass name, image, likeness rules by the end of the month. Of course, that timetable kind of facilitated by states like Georgia, who have name, image, likeness rules set to go into effect on July 1. So the NCAA needs to sound off on that as well. And of course, now Congress trying to get involved. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, I mean, the NCAA is going to look back on this thing and say we had an opportunity to get out in front of this, and now we're going to be falling under the jurisdiction, of the federal government. Now, yes, I agree. Student athletes aren't employees, but who makes a bigger impact on the campus than a student athlete? Employees don't make that big of an impact. Employees get raises and all kind of stuff, or new facilities and all kind of stuff. So when you talk about the fact that basically Mark Emmert is there. I don't know where the headquarters are. I don't know where he lives, but he had to get out of bed, put on a suit, and say, look, we're going to have to hear your voice, see your face. When the federal government gets involved, they're saying, look, lifetime health care for these guys. I don't know. That's not really feasible. But at the same time, too, I do think that something should be put in there to where however many years I spend in college, no matter what sport I play, I should be covered by you the same amount of years when I leave college. But I just think that now this thing is here. It's here. It's not going anywhere. They need to put it in their mind that it's not going nowhere. So to the people that think I'm not going to watch college football or basketball or baseball anymore, you will not be missed. There is no way the system in place now could stand any longer. It is impossible. The fact, what? Mark Emmert had to go, to DC or something? He's sitting there. I'm just saying, This was crazy about it, though, with everything in it. They do this for amateurs? I'm just saying, like, all this stuff that's going on, they doing this for amateurs? No, because they're not amateurs. They understand that if me, BJ, and Kevin have a business model, right? And we put it in 20 years ago, and all of a sudden this thing started doing crazy, so we're not going to say, no. We're not going to take the money, man. That's not what we did it for. Yes, the hell we are. We're going to take every single dime. But we also need to understand that things are outdated. Name and image like this is going to be, it should have been here sooner rather than later. But when you look at the influence that these players have now, you look at the money these coaches are making, you look at how much money is being filtered through these facilities. Florida, the University of Florida has a $1 billion 10-year. It's like $1.1 billion infrastructure for the next 10 years. That's a college doing that. When I was at Florida, I was trying to get a Guthrie box for $5. I'm just saying we need to stop acting like we are treating this thing the right way. But Mark Emmert, I know what he's doing, Kevin. He's like, hey, man, they did it. What you want me to? I couldn't stop them. But if you don't set the rules, you're gonna have to fall under them. And I know the NCAA think they're smarter than us because they're gonna come out with certain restrictions. No, this thing is here. And Kevin and BJ, I'm happy that it is here. But people thought that the transfer portal was going to be that can of worms. I think this is going to be what you're going to have a problem with, because now you got to deal with every single athlete that has their own brand, that has their own following. And dare I say, BJ, an opportunity that the NCAA kind of like dropped the ball on. They're going to look back on this day and say, we had our opportunity to get out in front and we let somebody else do it.
Well, a couple of thoughts. I think you're very much right in the idea that the NCAA kind of had to know this was coming, and they could have gotten in front of it and kind of been proactive in terms of the inevitable redefinition or redefining, I should say, of amateurism, and they did not. And now you're having a situation, and Kevin, you've talked about this, where you're having to basically come up with some form of a consensus so that the system can work. Because if you move forward with 50 different, institutions essentially defining what amateurism is, that's going to be a difficult standard to maintain. And I think the state government sort of pushed the NCAA towards where we are now. But I think you're right, Ben, about what is amateurism? What does an amateur get in an era of extreme popularity and college sports, in many respects, having kind of elements of the professional landscape in play at the college level? And you go back 30 or 40 or 50 years, and Ben, I would even say 20 years back to your career, where we are now with college athletics in terms of the media coverage, in terms of the scope and scale, in terms of the stadium sizes, in terms of the responsibilities potentially with the student athletes, in terms of the popularity and the name recognition and the brand awareness. We're in a totally different place. And one thing that I've always found to be a little difficult to process is that, macro speaking at least, so much about college athletics has changed from where we were, let's say 30 years ago or 40 years ago, but not a ton of the student athlete profile in terms of sort of the reciprocation and a potential benefits package. Not a ton of that has advanced alongside, the explosion of popularity and coverage and monetization of college athletics. And we're not just talking about college football. So I think we're to a point in time where we have to redefine or understand or come to some sort of an agreement for what amateurism means. Ben, I know you ask that question all the time. Is this amateurism? 90,000 people paying $100, or whatever it is, or are people going out, buying shirts and hats and stickers for amateurs? It's an interesting dynamic to try to process, but I do think we're to the point where we need to identify what we feel like amateurism is, and we need to look at and explore possibilities of wide-ranging impact. Could you have a benefits package? Could there be the potential for a stipend? Could you have some pooled money in some respects? But it's going to be very interesting, Kevin, to see kind of what comes from these discussions, which may be a catalyst for even more change.
Well, I think at the bare minimum, before we get off into paying players and stipends and all that, the bottom line is name, image, likeness, which is what I can go out and earn off of me. That's the bottom line of it all, right? If I'm running back, I can go out and make money because of who I am. Maybe not even because I'm the running back one or whatever. Maybe because I just have a cool, Instagram page or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Or maybe. Sorry, I am old. Maybe I'm have a gaming stream that I do on the side that has a lot of followers. I can get there. There are people that do this every day and get paid off of that. So I think that's the bottom line that, to me, I don't think a lot of people have a problem with. I think it is, hey, this is me. I'm Kevin Thomas in this case. I'm going to go out and make money because I'm me. And I think that should be allowed. No question. I think, do you have oversight into, hey, am I getting $40,000 to do something that I don't really have to do? Wink, wink. That we used to see in recruiting and, certain things around college where, guys would have summer jobs that they never went to, but magically got paid a lot of money to not go. So I think that's kind of the oversight you want. But in terms of the ability to go out and earn off yourself, sure. I think 100% people are on board with that. Now, you bring Congress involved, and that's when we get to everything but the point, because what are congressmen there to do? They're there to add more and more stuff to it until you realize, you look back and go, this really has nothing to do with the original intent of what we were talking about. That's my concern when you start talking about that, because immediately, like you said, Mark Emmert's there to talk about name, image, likeness, like athletes earning money off of themselves, and somehow healthcare got brought up. Somehow transgender athletes, are they competing with males? They got brought up. How does that get brought up in a name, image, likeness at a government hearing? That's how it happens. So that to me would be very concerning, that the end result is everything but what you originally set out to do, which is allow athletes to go out and make money off of their own means, off of themselves, which I don't think anybody necessarily has a inherent problem with, other than there probably needs to be some guidelines by which you can do that. the end. I get worried that it's going to turn into about 10 times more the amount than it needs to be because of this. But, by and large, just to stick with the point, name, image, likeness, that is going to happen. And I think the NCAA is, in some respects, hoping that Congress passes a law so that they can say, we're just going to do what they said and not have to be the enforcement arm, not have to be the overseers of all this. Because you're now talking, if you're talking, hey, because this kind of all started with a guy at UCF making a YouTube channel. You now have to look at D1, D2, D3. Those are all under the purview of the NCAA. And you're talking about thousands and thousands of athletes who are potentially out doing, quote, their own thing. And that's a hard thing to oversee. Everybody's stream, YouTube channel, personal appearances, autograph signings, whatever it is that they may come up with in ways to make money for themselves. That is a hard thing to oversee, just as the NCAA alone.
It's supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. I mean, BJ, you say, how do we define amateurism? It redefined itself. I mean, we ain't have to define it. I mean, you look at these players and the impact. I mean, think about it. If Tim Tebow didn't play for Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence would be the most famous Jacksonville Jaguar, and he hasn't played yet. Trevor Lawrence got introduced to Patrick Mahomes. Hey, Pat, man, this Trevor. I mean, all I'm saying is, yes, Kevin, it's going to be chaotic. Yes, it's going to be hard to, facilitate all these different things. Welcome to college athletics. It's already crazy. You already have to deal with the fact that, they go through all these things to get you on campus. And when they get you on campus, if you do anything to try to monetize from you in trouble. I like the fact that finally these NCAA bylaws, you can rip it up because all that stuff is only for the athletes. Coaches got it. Managers, publicists, agents, they do movies. I mean, they getting all kind of stuff. And the player goes, hey, coach, listen, I got to go home. I'm having a family emergency. You think I can get $150? No, son, I'm just praying for you. I'm just saying, I just got a problem with the fact that the NCAA needs to know that now the way you can generate revenue now in 2021 is nothing. It don't even compare to how you can make money back in the day. That's what should scare the NCAA is you don't know how they get money. Like, to us, it looks like our kids are watching somebody play a video game on YouTube. That's exactly what they're doing. What you don't know is the guy they're watching is making money playing a video game on YouTube. So now they're going to have to figure out a way, because it ain't going to be the autograph signings. It ain't going to be what we understand. It's going to be what we don't understand. But that's what definitely grabs the appeal of the quote younger generation.
Well, and Kevin, you're right. The name, image, and likeness, complexities are many. But I think that role, and to use the phrase scope and scale, I think it's going to continue to expand as you look at the unprecedented growth of college athletics, the just endless revenue streams that exist in various capacities. And I think we're going to move forward from this with, in some ways, more questions than answers. And I do think name, image, likeness might be sort of step one in the recalibration of amateurism, or the reimagining of potentially what it could be. But yeah, it's very complex. And I do think I'm with you. I do think the NCAA, because they could have gotten in front of this, back to Ben's original point, they could have led the conversation and sort of shaped this in some respects. I think now they're sitting back kind of hoping it'll be done for them. And to a certain extent, it already has been.
Yeah, I mean, well, states are passing laws already. I mean, they're already on the books. And then now Congress, and obviously they're feeling the crunch to get something done before July 1, when a number of states have laws going into effect. So we'll look at this more a little bit later in the show, as obviously this is going to be continuous, a big talking point for the next, 3 weeks or so, until you get to July 1, when we really kind of see this ball of yarn start to unravel, and what is name, image, likeness as it pertains to not only the high profile athletes, but just regular athletes that probably most people don't know who they are at the end of the day. So we'll talk more about this later in the show. We'll also take a look, obviously, at the Sun Belt. Jamie Chadwell going to join us. Coastal Carolina, they raised their profile in a huge way last year. But who are the favorites in that league? We'll get to that next. Jamie Chadwell will join us top of hour number 2. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Live at ESPNCoastal.com, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube page. We'll chat with Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina, coming up in about 20 minutes or so here on 3 and Out. AP Coach of the Year from 2020. Also, had a lot of folks talking about the Chanticleers there and potential at-large. Could they crash the New Year's Six and things of that nature? So we'll chat with him coming up in just a little bit. But you look at the Sun Belt as a whole, BJ, really raised the profile in the last handful of years with a number of programs getting P5 wins. As a number of them got P5 wins last season, as a matter of fact. Where do you kind of see the Sun Belt right now? I know you look at the eastern side of the Sun Belt, and it looks to be very, very tough, but very, very balanced.
I think it's going to be a great year. Where do I see the league? On the rise. And I think the last couple of seasons, the Sun Belt has really made a statement, not only regionally, but nationally. When you think about the overall profile of some of these programs, some of these coaches, some of these players, when you talk about the Sun Belt, you're not only talking about some of the more fascinating teams in the country, but some of the best coaches, some of the best players. And you have signature wins that stand out, not only against Power 5 competition, but in bowl games, in Group of 5 showcase games. And I think if you look around some of the preseason top 25 polls that are coming out, you're going to see Coastal Carolina. You're going to see Louisiana. Don't be surprised if you see Appalachian State. I think just about every program in the conference has high expectations, and for good reason. Look, Georgia Southern has an extremely challenging schedule coming up, but they have an opportunity to make a national statement or two. I think they should feel like they are a contender. I think Georgia State, when you look up in Atlanta, what they have, a Quad Brown and company, I think they should feel like they are a contender. Arkansas State, traditionally right there. Of course, Coastal Carolina, App State, and Louisiana in some order are probably the preseason favorites, but I think there's great depth, great balance, and a lot of star power all throughout the league.
I think at the end of the day, when you start talking about what Coastal Carolina trying to do last year, or what they're trying to continue to do this year, Kevin and BJ, it's this. 2 years ago, Tennessee wants to play. They want to play Georgia State. How did that go? This same. Yes. Okay.
You want to talk about Tennessee losing to Georgia State also, apparently.
Exactly. There you go. All right. Now get out. Okay. Now. I apologize. I'm over here. Listen. For those of you who don't, I'm not going to give my full current situation, but that gives kind of, a brief little synopsis. A child walking up to me with a milk mustache, begging for cookies. Anyway, before I lose, the little bit of train of thought I got left, I just think that BJ, I know we're gonna get into it later in the show. The Sun Belt is the conference that nobody wants to play. Like nobody out of conference wants to play this because I talk about what Georgia State did against Tennessee. This same Iowa State team, who's supposed to be able to break up, these elite programs at the top, got beat at home against Louisiana, handle it. I saw that whole game. So Coastal Carolina, which, at one point was a bottom feeder, is now kind of leading the way. App is always going to get the ink in the paper. Louisiana's going to have, an incredible run game and a nice defense to go with it. But Coastal Carolina said to themselves, not only do we want to play well, we want to be able to lead the way in this great conference known as the Sun Belt. So, yeah, I do think that bigger than the conference on the rise, they're the conference that you do not schedule out of conference, because not only will you pay them, they're going to come in there and beat you. I remember the Georgia State. I think it was the Georgia State coach that went up to Tennessee and beat him and told him, "Bring me my money." I'm just saying this, and I don't know if Georgia Southern was in the Sun Belt then back in 2013, but either way, my Florida Gators got added to that hit list as well. But yeah, the Sun Belt is an incredible conference. And BJ, I know we get to talking about some of the BJ and Kevin, some of the best quarterbacks in the country. I know we're gonna get to it later. Watch out for the Sun Belt. You talking about star power from top to bottom, even though Grayson McCall, I think, is going to be the headline.
Yeah, Kevin, great quarterback play. And to me, that in some respects keys a lot of the success we've seen for some of these teams. Yeah, Grayson McCall is a freshman, not only went undefeated in the regular season, but finished in the top 10 in passer rating, had some incredibly clutch finishes to games. You think about their comeback late against Troy, for example, just absolute, just ice in the veins, coming through with a big win when it matters. But yeah, Chase Bryce, former Clemson and Duke quarterback, is at Appalachian State. Jake Bentley, SEC fans, former South Carolina quarterback who was at Utah, he's at South Alabama. James Blackman, former Florida State quarterback, is at Arkansas State. So you're talking about guys like Grayson McCall and Levi Lewis who are coming back, but also some big time transfers. And Kev, I think just the overall talent at every position is really impressive. You think about some of the running backs that Louisiana has had. You think about the defensive players that Coastal Carolina is set to bring back. I know it's easy to look at Coastal Carolina, right, and see, oh, Grayson McCall, the tight end, Isaiah Likely, who may be a first-team All-American, and those guys are absolutely incredible. But they bring back 10 starters defensively, the Chanticleers. Talking about guys like Teddy Gallagher and Silas Kelly and D. Jordan Strong. These are some of the best players in the country. So it's going to be a great year in the Sun Belt. Georgia Southern, I think Justin Tomlin's going to do a really nice job. You think about J.D. King, Derek Canteen as a freshman, tied for the national lead in interceptions with 6. He's only going to get better. So it's going to be a great year in the league.
And I think, BJ, what would be interesting to follow is where have they put themselves in terms of G5 conferences? Those things kind of run in cycles, I guess, but it seems like for a few years it was the MAC. You get the Thursday night MACtion or Tuesday night MACtion, and everyone's like, man, there's some good teams here, and they would pull off an upset or two, and you would find them, performing fairly well come bowl season as well. We've seen, Conference USA, not so much from the AC conference, but Conference USA, the MAC, the AC conference, the AAC for those who are not in the know. But no, I think they might be positioning themselves as the top G5 conference as far as football goes here in quick order, maybe as early as 2021 when it's all said and done.
Well, they're absolutely up there, and they've turned a lot of heads the last couple of years. I do think your favorite conference, the AC, the American Athletic Conference, you talk about Central Florida, you talk about Cincinnati, you think about Memphis, Houston, Navy, some of those programs. I mean, that's probably the standard right now. But I think the Sun Belt, and it's not just the Power 5 wins. Used to chat with a couple of years ago, Carl Benson, and he would talk about the importance, the former commissioner of the Sun Belt, he would talk about the importance of not just the Power 5 wins, which certainly get a lot of national attention, but when you're matched up with an AC school, when you're matched up with a Conference USA school, when you play the MAC, those are important measuring sticks and important barometers that kind of help you reposition yourself in the pecking order amongst your peers. So those are really important games. But you can see the Sun Belt's improvement in various ways. Look at what they've done in bowl games. They've been one of the most successful conferences in bowl games. Look at the rise of some of these national names, stars that we've talked about, that people all around the country know, coaches that are big name coaches that are turning down opportunities to come back and stay where they are. Ben, I know something we've talked about, the NFL draft. You look at the NFL draft, the Sun Belt's everywhere. And if you look at preseason All-America, first, second, third team, you might see a Grayson McCall on there. You might see an Isaiah Likely. You might see a Derek Canteen. You might see a couple of these guys, Osiris Torrance. These are guys with All-American ability. The Raymond Johnsons from last year at Georgia Southern. You're thinking about big-time players. So this is a league on the rise, and Coastal Carolina, certainly one of those programs leading the way.
I mean, bigger than the conference on the rise, I think that the conference to be reckoned with and for people to take notice. I mean, the one thing about it, like a Cincinnati, right, you'll need Memphis and Houston to be good when you're good. Well, the thing about it, the usual suspect in the Sun Belt, people think Sun Belt, people think App State, and rightfully so. But then that's how good Louisiana is. But now, the party crashes now. It's Coastal Carolina. I mean, but you still got Georgia Southern, you still got Georgia State, you still got South Alabama. So in order to be that next conference, to be able to break into that college football playoff or New Year's Six, you got to have the built-in storylines. And I know we're going to get to these quarterbacks. People kept talking about with the transfer portal and these coaches saying, well, why would I go out there and get a high school kid when I could just pull them from one of these P5 schools? You know what P5 quarterbacks end up? In G5 schools. Why? Because the competition is not that different. Because something that people talking about, the third pick in the draft, Trey Lance. That was he was in that G5 squads out there and still went. So You got the headliners, BJ and Kevin. I think now, one, don't schedule the Sun Belt. Dan Mullen, stay away from them because they're good enough to beat you to show you that after Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, and Oklahoma, the talent level is not as different as people think it is.
I think the big thing is I don't want to pay you to beat me as at the end of the day. But yeah, North Dakota State actually FCS been there. But look, I think we're seeing the G5 grow. And BJ, if we're seeing what we're being told is happening kind of behind the scenes with next week's presentation with more access, I think you'll see more growth there in the G5 as, hey, one of us is getting into party every single year. Maybe we get a chance for two, depending on how we play throughout the regular season. So I think a chance to see more and more of that growth as players say, look, I can still get in the playoff and go to a G5 school and compete for a national championship. We got more to come. Speaking of that, Jamey Chadwell will join us top of next hour right here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We'll hear from Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina, coming up in just a little bit, top of next hour. But we always enjoy great moments in sports history, great records that were set. But on this date in 1946, New York Giants manager Mel Ott becomes the first manager to get tossed from both games of a doubleheader. You got to be a special kind of mad to get tossed from a doubleheader. I mean, really. It's going to be me? Is that what you said? Okay.
That's impressive. Ben, is that what you're saying? That's consistency. That's consistency. Not once. Nope. Twice. We're playing 2 games. I'm getting thrown out of 2 games. That's very impressive.
BJ, be honest. Like, he had something to do. He forgot he had a double header that day, and he told his daughters, yeah, I can absolutely take you to the mall. And she was like, Dad, what the heck?
Malls around in 1946?
Yes, there were still malls around in 1946. And she was like, yeah, Dad, you got to take me. And then he's like, all right, hold on. Let me go out there in the first inning, get thrown out. And then I'll go back. You sit in the food court. I'll go back, get thrown out again, and I'll come back and get you.
Yeah, it was, oh shoot, I forgot I got to be, hey, you stink. What? Okay. And then and then it escalates and then you get out. I like that, Christian. Yeah.
Thank you, Cody Queen. Cody always coming to my defense. So malls didn't exist until the 1950s.
No one bought clothing until the 1950s.
They didn't go to the mall.
They made it.
They had their own sewing machine in their house and they made it themselves. Exactly, Cody. Thank you so much. Christian trying to clown me on the show. No, malls didn't exist.
Way was I trying to
because you're like,
you?
Of course they went to the mall.
I think
malls didn't exist until the 50s.
I mean, Kevin, have you ever gotten thrown out? You ain't got thrown out yet?
Have I ever gotten thrown out? No. BJ's gotten thrown out as a fan, though. That is a great story. Now he's walking away. He did. He got thrown out. This is probably the worst run of sentence you could say. BJ got thrown out as a fan at a high school baseball game.
It was a JV game.
Even worse.
Goodness.
Even worse.
Oh my God.
High school JV baseball game.
We literally have PSAs that say you should love umps. BJ.
That's right. Jamie Chadwell will join us. I bet he never got kicked out of a JV game. He'll join us next. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live ESPNCoastal.com. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, hour 2. Here as we are efforting Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina head football coach. We expect to be joined by him here momentarily. Is certainly a team that took college football by storm in 2020, going 11-0 in the regular season, 8-0 in the Sun Belt before they lost in overtime, by the way, to Liberty. Of course, they famously scheduled BYU on what, BJ, like a Tuesday or Wednesday
Right.
week of, and put out one of the best games, I would say at worst, top 4 or 5 ball games we saw all of last season in college football.
Yeah, that Coastal Carolina BYU game was absolutely amazing. And that was a huge showcase contest as well because BYU was in the top 10. And it's interesting to think about sort of the potential evolution of the college football playoff, as we talked about yesterday, and do so with what Coastal Carolina did a year ago in mind. I mean, in the opinion of you guys, and if you go back to Coastal Carolina's resume again, beat a top 10 BYU and beat a top 20 Louisiana. So you had 2 top 20 wins last year, and for what it's worth, a Power 5 win against Kansas, but you also beat Appalachian State, who was fringe top 25. You also beat Georgia Southern. I mean, if we have a 12-team playoff, and I understand that had we gone off of the model that we talked about yesterday, you would have had Cincinnati get the auto bid as the highest ranked G5 team. But I think Coastal Carolina, in a situation where you have 6 at-large bids, would have been one of the favorites to get an at-large bid based on that resume, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, too, BJ, everybody, let's face it, Zach Wilson, obviously being the number 2 overall pick, BYU, they scheduled him on a Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Kevin, we're going to pad our stats. We're going to go to this place called Conway. We're going to get this dub. And it just didn't work out that way. And then you go to the College Football Playoff Committee, Kevin, they asked in the commission, I mean, what happened, man? I mean, BYU played a great game. They lost. Why didn't Coastal Carolina move up? Oh, well, I mean, it was great for a quarter. No, just say what it is. Sometimes, the story didn't end. I mean, the hero died in the end. I get it. You want the movie didn't end the way you thought it was going to end. And now you're not giving a thorough review of what actually went down. But I will say, Kevin, when you think about the Coastal Carolinas of the world, they got to go undefeated. They got to beat, Heisman Trophy candidates, 2nd overall picks to even get the recognition they've earned all season.
Certainly, and again, I think a lot resting on one player in Grayson McCall, who got a lot of pub last year, as BJ said, maybe one of the top quarterbacks out there. Only, I think, I'm trying to look at the stats, only 2 picks, maybe 2-3 picks last year, and 26 touchdowns. Also was their leading returning rusher. So you got a guy that accounts for a lot of the offense coming back, and obviously teams are going to key on that, and you wonder if you see a little bit of a sophomore slump from Grayson McCall.
Well, I think this is a guy who's proven himself to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And you mentioned his statistical production. Last year was his redshirt freshman season. So keep in mind, he now has some experience. But a year ago, 26 touchdowns, Kevin, passing, just 3 interceptions. And as you mentioned, almost 600 yards rushing and 7 rushing touchdowns. So you're talking about a guy that's extremely proficient. You're talking about a guy that obviously can move the football with his legs. Now, Georgia Southern fans may be thinking, he did not play against Georgia Southern, was hurt that week. But you look at a couple of these games, a 4-touchdown game against Arkansas State, a 4-touchdown game against Georgia State. You're talking about over 300 yards against Liberty, against Troy, against Arkansas State. So an incredibly dynamic playmaker. But Ben, like any good team, you have a quarterback, but you also have big-time defenders, and I think defense with 10 returning starters is one of the aspects that makes Coastal Carolina so good.
Whenever you got guys returning, I mean, you got guys. It depends on what type of guys that's returning, BJ and Kevin. And when you look at the fact that, take nothing away from BYU, and I'm taking nothing away from that win. Coastal Carolina has to deal with this Sun Belt competition year in and year out, and they got tired of being that team that everybody can't wait. Whenever you got they don't want to be this team. When you got players rubbing their hands together saying we got Coastal. No, now you got the usual suspects: App, Louisiana. They've earned that. They've earned that national acclaim from doing it year in and year out. Now, Coastal Carolina, BJ, they had their way with this division last year, and I know I think the championship game got canceled or whatever. I would have loved to have seen that because didn't Coastal Carolina beat Kansas 2 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken? So yeah, these guys, they ready. They understand. They got that crazy look, that teal looking feel like that. They look like the Jaguars of the Sun Belt. That's why BJ really like it because he loving them colors, but they got the game to back it up.
Yeah, and they get Kansas again, but Kansas makes the road trip to Conway. And I guess when you keep beating them, you can say, no, can you just come here and not make us go all the way out there to Kansas to have to play you as well. We'll have, apparently I'm being told we will have Coach Chadwell momentarily. So we'll take a break a little bit early and we'll come back and we should have Jamie Chadwell when we return. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Good to have you back here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, and Ben Troop. Glad you are with us, and we are pleased to be joined by the head football coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers and 2020 AP College Football Coach of the Year, Jamie Chadwell, steps in here on 3 and Out. Coach, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, appreciate you coming on. And I guess looking back on it, can you put into words, 2020 was crazy for everybody, but what 2020 meant to your program in general?
Well, I think what it did is it allowed our brand to finally get a national stage. You know, we feel like we've been building a program here, and there's a lot of positive things about it, but we were literally the only ones that knew what we were about. And to have the opportunity to be on national television 10 times, have game day here, obviously the BYU game, we were able to really put who we are out there in front of a national audience, and that has opened up so many doors for us and our program, and help us, and it's sped up our process and the building process of what we're trying to do, and it's sped it up tremendously.
And Coach, talk about that momentum if you can. You know, you guys are a young program overall, a young FBS program, and you were in the national top 10, one of the stories of the year in college football. And I know expectations clearly high once again.
They are. You know, that's a different bird right now. The expectations were high in our program, but not on the outside. And now there's a lot more expectations from the outside, and our main focus, our job, especially as coaches, is keeping us focused on us and what we've got to do. I think when you have success and you get a lot of eyes on you, there's obviously a lot of positives with that, but sometimes it adds more stress, more pressure, and we've got to make sure we put that focus back on us and what we do well, so we can continue to hopefully win games at a high level.
And Coach, obviously, you talk about the performance you guys had last year against BYU, but that Sun Belt Conference is no slouch. I mean, you guys outside of just beat up on each other in the conference, you guys are pretty good for these out of conference games you playing as well.
Yeah, you hit it on the head right there. The conference is arguably the best in G5. Our top to bottom. There's not one week where you feel like you have an off week where you can just roll the ball out and win. I mean, it's really good. People care about football here. One publication put our East Division as the toughest division in all the G5 football. And it's really good coaches, good players, people that support it, good traditions. And so if you come through this one and you can win games in this one, you've done something. And then, as you said, you add on, your non-conference. And we've got a really tough schedule this year, and one that we're going to have to be ready for each week.
Jamie Chadwell joining us here, head coach at Coastal Carolina. Coach, take us back to how that BYU game came about, because obviously it turned out to be one of the better games of the college football season, but I know coaches are creatures of routine and preparation and trying to get ready for a team, but that game obviously helped further you into the into the national spotlight, but it happened on like 3 days' notice. It
did. Thursday morning, 9 a.m., we found out, that this is what's happening, and that try to get ready for it. And it was a full-out sprint Thursday and Friday. I mean, you're basically done by Thursday with, your game plan. And so Thursday was basically a walkthrough, just trying to introduce to BYU. And then Friday, we tried to have a little practice just to go over some base things. And then Saturday had a walkthrough and tried to walk through. We walked through outside on our practice fields because we couldn't use the game field because of game day, and just tried to say, hey, this is what we're going to try to do, and we're going to do what we do best, and hopefully it's going to be good enough. And it was definitely unique. Add game day here on top of that, and all the expectations from that. And but one of those you'll never forget. Obviously, whether you're a fan of us or them, but just college football was a great game. Obviously, came down to the last play. Right there on the 1 yard line, basically 1 yard away. Just a great game to be a part of. And supposedly we only had about 5,000 fans here for COVID, but it sounded a lot louder. I can guarantee you that.
And Coach, championship teams, normally step up in the clutch. And when I look at your team last year, you think about the BYU finish, you think about Louisiana, you think about Troy. What was it like leading the team that when the moments were brightest, your team found a way to come through?
Well, there's a confidence there, from a coach when those guys believe that they're going to win no matter what the situation. You know, sometimes you just start making those plays that you scratch your head, how in the world they do that. But those guys really believed that, hey, we were never out of anything and that we could find a way to win. And you know, 11 out of 12 or whatever many times we had the opportunity, we found a way to do that. And I really credit our leadership, our seniors, and now the super seniors. They were tremendous all year long and keeping our guys focused, especially after we started getting some attention nationally. They never let that go to our head, and they just kept doing what they were capable of. And there was just always a calm. There was never really a panic. There was never a panic, hey, this game looks like it's in doubt. You know, and it was always just something that those guys believed in, and we went out and found ways to made it happen.
And Coach, what's the message for this year? Obviously, you're not going to sneak up on nobody this year, whether in conference or out of conference, with what you guys did a year ago. Grayson McCall is as good as a quarterback as you have in college football, regardless of regardless of what leagues they in. How do you build on? How do you take what you learned about yourself, about your team in 2020, and make sure there is no letdown in 2021?
Well, the main thing for us, we shared with our team in the off season is. Everything we have to do is about finding a way to be better. You know, and better might not mean exactly have a better record than we did, but can we do the things that got us to that point? Can we do those things better? So our whole off season has been about us. I think anytime you climb a mountain, and that's what we were trying to do, we were climbing the mountain. And we climbed it, and we got to this mountaintop. And I think what most people do when they get there, they stop and look back. And when you stop and look back, you're in trouble. And we've really challenged our guys on we're going to try to get better and we're going to keep climbing because now we're circled. We were circling everybody last year. Now we're going to be the ones circled. And if we can focus on us and what we need to do better, that takes the focus off the other things that we can't control. And for us, what we can control is how we prepare, how we show up, all those different things, the attitude that we come with every day. And so our whole emphasis has been about being better every day. And if we can do that, then I like our chances to continue to improve and hopefully go out and do some special things again.
Jamie Chadwell joining us here, head football coach at Coastal Carolina. Speak a minute, if you can, about your quarterback, Grayson McCall, a redshirt freshman a season ago. I know coaches have confidence in their guys. Did you foresee the type of season that he put together taking place from a redshirt freshman quarterback, and where's the limit with this kid?
Well, you know what, we felt like, hey, this guy's got a chance to be good. You know, we saw it. He had a decent spring before COVID happened, and then he missed a lot from contact tracing in the summer. So he really didn't get a chance a lot until one of our presumed starters got hurt in fall camp. And then in fall camp, he just really took control, and we like, this guy gives us the best chance to win a championship. That was our exact words we used. We thought, hey, he's going to make some mistakes, but he's also going to make some big plays for us. And he made a lot of big plays and he made very few mistakes. You know, I mean, it was something that we didn't expect as good as he was. We didn't expect that, not this early. And I think he's really just scratched the surface. A lot of the things, you know, was new for him last year. It was first time going through, you know, being a starter, being in the spotlight, being able to handle some adversity, and he really did well. And the thing that he's got about him is he does have those intangible qualities that great quarterbacks have that you just, you know, everybody's talking about the it factor. He has it. And he's really improved this offseason. Like the year he had, you'd think somebody would just relax, and he's put weight on. He's gotten bigger. He's done the things he needs to because he got beat up a little bit last year. And, you know, what most people don't realize, he broke his thumb in the Troy game and played second half of broke thumb, and the whole game at Liberty with a broke thumb. And so, you know, he got beat up a little bit. And so he had areas to improve, and he's went and done that. And he's the best quarterback that I've ever had the opportunity to coach from just his intangible pieces and the love of the game that he has.
Top 20 defense a year ago, Coach. You have 10 starters back, I believe. How good was that group last season, and how good could they be this year?
Well, they were really good. Obviously, last year we had the Player of the Year in the league. We had, you know, a lot of all conference guys, and they played really well together. We might have not been the most talented, but they played well within the scheme of our defense. They played hard, and they were really able to cause a lot of turnovers. And so it's going to be very hard to replace Teron Jackson, who got drafted by the Eagles. That's hard. You can't replace the player of the year, with one guy. We're not going to be able to do that. We're going to have committee. He's going to be challenging, but I do think we do have some young guys in our program that were biding their time a little bit last year. Some guys that got some opportunities, that got limited reps, that really are ready to take on a role. So I think we have a chance to be as good or maybe better overall in a lot of ways. I think we've improved in a lot of areas from a recruiting standpoint. Now, can we rush the passer like Teron did? No, not right now. But I do think we'll be able to make up for it some other ways. And I think we got some young guys that can come in and give us stuff. So I expect our defense to be right up there again as well.
And Coach, great defense, great players, all on the offense, with your quarterback being the headliner. But Conway, South Carolina, that Teal Field, you talk about that BYU game, you talk about playing teams to the wire. What is that home field atmosphere like? Fans in the stands or not?
Well, last year it was tremendous. Obviously, we only had 5,000 because of COVID, and it was always loud. They announced here recently that we're going back to full capacity, 20,000. Our surf turf here is a special place to play. It gets loud in here. I don't know if it's the beach and the salt air or what, but it echoes all through Conway. So it's a special place to play, and our fans are excited about what we're doing. Now that we've been in this league now 4 years, we're understanding the rivalry piece of it. When we weren't in it and you're in the Big South, we had all those rivals in the Big South and they were gone. And then you're trying to develop rivalries. And when you stink like we did, you can't beat nobody. You're nobody's rival, right? Where everybody's homecoming, basically. And so now that we've been able, we turned it around and we beat some of these teams we never had before. We're starting to become some rivals for some people. Possibly piss everybody off on Twitter too, so that helps. And so our fans are excited about that, and people coming in, knowing the teams, knowing what they're about, learning about this league the last 4 years. I think you're going to see, as we continue to build this, I think you're going to see that this is going to be a tough place to play for years to come.
Jamie Chadwell joining us here on 3 and Out, head football coach at Coastal Carolina. Coach, a lot of news this week about what's to come next week with the subcommittee putting up proposals for expansion of the college football playoff, potentially to 12. Obviously, that would include access for the G5. Potentially, that could have been you had it been in place last year. What are kind of your thoughts on where this thing could potentially be heading? What might be the right number, and what's the right number to make sure that leagues like the Sun Belt get their representation in there if a team such as yourself kind of does it on the field?
Well, I hope we get to that point. I don't know the exact answer for any of that. Obviously, that's above my pay grade, and it makes my head hurt sometimes. So I try not to think too much about it. But I felt like last year we were very deserving, obviously, and so was Cincinnati. And it came down to basically an eye test, and I hate that. Because you hope that what you do on the field matters and who you beat matters. And so if we can get to the point where there's an automatic bid for a G5, but there's also an opportunity for an at-large too as well, I think that's the best way to go. And I don't know what that exact number is. I know you got to be careful with the number of games you play, et cetera, and how that goes down. But I think there's good football. Cincinnati last year in that Peach Bowl. I mean, it came down to the very last second there with Georgia. And Georgia's considered a top team throughout the year. And so I think that shows you that G5 teams, UCF 2-3 years ago, I think that shows you that teams can get good. And they need to be rewarded for that. And so hopefully we're heading in that direction. Whenever that will happen, who knows? But I think you'll see it eventually once they can agree on a layout of what it looks like.
Jamie Chadwell, head football coach, Coastal Carolina, our guest here on 3 and Out. Coach, really appreciate the time. Best of luck to you guys moving forward here into 2021. Thanks so much.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jamie Chadwell joining us here on 3 and Out, and obviously asked him there about the playoff at the end, BJ and Ben, which we'll find out next week what some of the recommendations are on the various models. But as he said, look, eye test, I can get it from a coach's standpoint. You think so-and-so is better than me because of an eye test. Well, that's not a let us solve it on the field test. So I think obviously we all agree expansion is going to happen. It's a matter of how much and how many. But as he said, look, at some point you got to give us a shot if we've earned it to go in and play it out on the field.
Yeah, really good perspective, and he's right. And you heard him there not only talk about his own team, but talk about Cincinnati, talk about Central Florida and some of those squads. And he's right. If you expand the playoff field, you absolutely have to have an automatic in for the highest ranked or the best G5 team. But also keep in mind that if you're going to expand the at-large pool, obviously, I believe in the proposed scenario that at least people were talking about, you would have 6 at-large bids, 4 buys, the Power 5 auto bids, and then 6 at large bids, I guess, to go along with the G5 auto bid. But you could theoretically see a scenario where you have a team like a Coastal Carolina. If, for example, last season Cincinnati would have got the G5 auto bid, Coastal Carolina would have been extremely deserving for an at-large bid. So don't just think about this moving forward as, okay, we'll have one G5 team every year. No. There may be years where you have 2, and I think that was a great point made by Coach.
Yeah, you're supposed to be able to reward the best conference regardless of G5 and P5. I mean, a lot of times, too, we be saying, why this expanding the playoffs is so teams like Coastal Carolina, like Cincinnati, get their just dues. It's never ever going to be for teams in these P5 conferences that wasn't even going to compete in their conference, during the regular season. But I do agree. I mean, when you think about what Coach Chadwell has done in a very, very short amount of time in Conway, I think it should be celebrated. And while everybody was thinking that BYU was just going to come to Conway, think about it, waking up Thursday morning, don't even know who you're going to be playing. So then, 2 days later to be beating up on BYU in the last seconds of the game has got to make you feel good. But like we all know, Kevin and BJ, when you got to come through that Sun Belt, nothing against BYU, but if you could beat that, if you could beat Louisiana, you could beat almost any team in the country not named Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. So I just think these guys got something going. But like you said, now they're on everybody's radar. They used to be a team to where people know they're gonna get a win. Now they're circling Coastal Carolina because of what they did in 2020. Hopefully, I like what you said though. They might not have a better record in 2021. Doesn't mean they're not a better team than it was in 2020.
And we appreciate Coach joining us here on 3 and Out. Much more to come all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Again, thanks to Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina, for joining us here on the program. And again, looking forward to see what they do in the Sun Belt, along with a number of other schools there in the G5 ranks. So appreciate him joining us. Since we had to chat with him, we bumped back take 3. So we do that now here on 3 and Out. And we have a special guest here on take 3. Who's going to tell us whether we make the right answers or the wrong answers. She's interning with us, our intern, Southern. Britt, welcome to 3 and Out. You are now in charge of take 3. So,
well, thank you for passing the mic over here.
Let's have it.
Hey guys, so I want to hear all the hot takes. Take 1. Who is the best quarterback in the Sun Belt?
Do you want the right answer or do you want a hot take?
I want a hot take.
Because I know who BJ wants me to say, and it's the guy we just talked to, his quarterback. But I will say, just to hot take it, it's in South Alabama and Jake Bentley, former SEC quarterback. Former SEC quarterback, coming up. I think if you just go straight, it is Grayson McCall, by the way. But hot take, it's Jake Bentley stepping in, a chance to finish his career, and I think come in and put up some big numbers. So there's my hot take answer for take 3.
Okay, yeah, Southern. I think about a couple of guys. I think for me it is Grayson McCall. Now, Kevin, I thought you were going to bring up Levi Lewis because he's been really good at Louisiana, and yeah, Jake Bentley. A lot of people excited to see what he can do. But Levi Lewis is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But I'm going to go Grayson McCall, as we've talked about on the show. 26 touchdowns last year, 3 picks as a freshman. 68.8% on completions, 10 yards per pass attempt, almost 2,500 yards, very dynamic on the ground as well. So, yeah, give me Grayson McCall, although there are some very good quarterbacks in the league overall.
I mean, if you want a hot take, I mean, obviously, I do agree with Kevin that Grayson McCall is going to be hard to beat him. Levi Lewis is going to be hard to beat him. But BJ, I mean, App State, I mean, the usual suspect, Chase Bryce, got a shot to be really, really good because he's gonna have a nice supporting cast around him. So I'm going with the hot takes today. They're coming off the press fast. So give me Chase Bryce, App State, Clemson transfer,
Duke transfer.
Oh, Duke. I'm sorry. I got a bunch of kids in the house.
Go from the last place he was in.
Yes.
Nice, guys. Okay, so I like the hot takes, but now we're going to go with some right answers here. Take 2. Should there be auto bids in the college football playoff?
Oh, well, the right answer is, of course, there should be. And I know BJ and I have debated this back and forth, but yes, there should be auto bids. I think conference champion should be in the playoffs. Now, if you want to debate how they determine their conference champion, that's fine. But yes, auto bids 100% have to be there for the college football playoff.
I think it makes sense to have them. We were talking about this in the show meeting. Potentially, could you have auto bids where maybe there is a threshold you have to meet? Because I do worry about potentially the impact of that rare scenario where you have a 7-5 or a 6-6 team win the league and get in. Maybe I could at least hear an argument for, hey, if you win your conference, you also have to be nationally ranked. Something like that. Potentially, I'd be willing to hear an argument like that. But overall, Kevin, yes, I will agree with you. I think it makes sense, especially if you have 12. We'll see what happens if you only expand to 8. But based on the scenarios we've seen, 12 teams, yes, I think it would make sense.
Absolutely, you should have auto bids. I do think conference champions, regardless of how many losses they have, should definitely be an auto bid. But BJ, something we was talking about in the previous, segment, it should be interchangeable. It shouldn't be the auto bid shouldn't be, what I'm saying, it should be more than just who you play, and where you play, but how you play them, regardless of conference. Because, like you just said, I mean, you can't just put me in an auto bid because I was in the SEC, ACC, if the Sun Belt was a better conference that year, if the Mountain West was a better conference that year, Conference USA. So, yes, auto bids, yes, but as long as it's interchangeable, I'm good with it.
I liked hearing your takes. I think the general sentiment here is auto bids, they're fine. But where's the standard? Are we going to be handing them out like candy? I'm definitely interested to see where this goes. Okay, take 3, guys. Who is the best player remaining in the NBA playoffs?
Oh, I got a hot take for you on this one, but I almost changed my mind after watching some KD highlights working over Giannis the other night. I was like, maybe I would be crazy, but Oh, you're saying it is KD?
For sure.
Well, my take is it's Jokic. He is MVP, but he's having great playoffs. 22-9, 36-8, 38-11, 16-9, 30. That's what he's doing in the playoffs. We are oogling Trae Young for what he's doing with Atlanta in the playoffs, and Jokic is basically a double-double every single night in the playoffs. Plus, a couple nights ago had 38, 11, and 9 was an assist as a big man away from a triple-double. Give me Nikola Jokic as my best remaining player in the playoffs. He is having himself a time thus far.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of guys you could go with. Jokic winning the MVP. The assist numbers for Jokic are crazy for a center. Like 8 or 9 assists per game from the regular season? But I was going back and forth. Giannis, Kevin Durant. Giannis defensively, at least through the regular season, had really high efficiency rating numbers. But it probably is Kevin Durant. I mean, just offensively, he's unstoppable. He's absolutely unstoppable. And whether it's attacking the basket, whether it's the mid-range game, whether it's shooting from deep, I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do. You know, maybe you could say Giannis, but I think at the end of the day, I will go Kevin Durant, and they are the clear favorites to win this whole thing.
Whew, the best remaining player in the playoffs right now. My goodness, man. Obviously, the easy choice is Kevin Durant, BJ. I mean, when you look at what he brings to tell, he makes it look easy. I mean, he's playing chess when everybody's playing checkers. But it still might be Giannis. I mean, just because he's not gonna beat the team he's playing doesn't mean he's not the best player left in the playoffs. I love what Giannis brings to the table. He's an incredible two-way player. I just think that he's staring at them killers in the face from Brooklyn. Where Brooklyn at? So I still think it is Giannis, man. I love Giannis' game. It's just that Kevin Durant just saying, "Look, young man. I mean, I'm that immovable object, as well as me and my band of brothers. But for me, I'm gonna go with the Greek Freak."
Lots of different takes, lots of different athletes for sure. I mean, I have to go with KD though. I'm just saying.
No,
how can you not?
That's not a wrong. Like I said, I watched the highlights of KD actually making Giannis kind of trip over his own feet. And I was like, "You're doing that to another MVP guy out there." That's saying a lot. I tried to do the hot take thing and not say the obvious answer. But obviously, KD's having a tremendous postseason.
And Ben, I don't know what you do. I mean, you and I were watching a game not long ago, and guys are right on him. I mean, you talk about his length, you talk about the elevation. When he pulls up, I don't know what you do. And of course, it's so fluid and smooth in terms of getting to the basket. And when Kyrie's playing the way Kyrie is playing, I mean, that is an unstoppable duo. But how do you defend them? I mean, what do you do?
Just get the series over with quick. I mean, because the whole thing about the thing about Kevin Durant, I mean, we talk about skill sets. We talk about being able to handle the rock. We talk about being able to score at will. We talk about being able to get to your shot, create separation. You have never seen anything. LeBron's in the class by himself. I get that. You've never seen nothing like KD. KD can really handle the rock. And listen, handling the rock is not bringing the ball up the court. That's not handling the rock. I'm talking about one-on-one. You can't stay in front of him. 6'10", got a mid-range game. I mean, can shoot the three, can get to the basket, makes it look easy. So yes, I love Giannis, but Kevin Durant is that dude. But look, the guy who was box office and makes it all go, that would be Kyrie. You better put some respect on that man's name.
Very well said, Ben. I've got guys just yelling into the ears like, "Oh, you could take KD." Like, why are you saying this to me in my ear, Christian? Like, you do this all the time. People don't hear this on the air, but like, I'm trying to formulate a thought, and Christian's like, "Really?"
Listen, I'm drawing the comparisons, right? You're an elite athlete. You can run sub 440. You can throw an 85-mile-an-hour fastball. Your name's also Kevin, so I'm just assuming the fact that you can go out there and put buckets up. You're a walking bucket, Kevin.
I appreciate you saying I can. I thought you were going to say I can run a sub 40, which is true.
But I was just like, taking the math out because you ran a 36.5, right? I was evaluating the math there, and I think you could run like a sub 440, Kevin. So you're an elite athlete. You're an elite athlete, man.
I was. We started that 40 run on a Saturday. I was projected to finish it before Sunday.
Yeah.
So I will say that.
And listen, he might be a little slower right now because Coach Kevin took a line drive off the thigh. So he's day to day right now. He's day to day. but still an elite athlete.
BJ saw it and thought I needed medical attention.
It's rough. It's serious.
It's almost as bad as when I kneed you in the thigh when we were playing basketball.
That went straight into my bone. That's why I was like, I could not walk for a little bit.
It's
You
'cause
like,
there's just no muscle there. It was just skin and bone.
Yeah, pretty much. That being said, that's take 3. Southern, we appreciate you.
Thank
Appreciate
you for
you,
having me, you
yeah.
guys. Thanks for answering all the takes.
Hopefully we answered satisfactorily.
That's what we pay them for, is
Like
to
the
answer the
hot
take,
take.
so they have to.
We've got more to come here on 3 Now, including name, image, likeness in front of Congress. Also, if there had been a 12-team playoff in years past, who's a team that definitely would have got there and won a championship? We'll debate that in the final hour as well. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, and Ben has got a plate full of tacos, apparently. Cody hit me up. He's like, look at Ben. Ben has got tacos galore. I couldn't see it. You got to hold it up. No, I can't see it. Oh, my goodness. So Ben doesn't want to be on this segment because he's got tacos.
No. Listen, I'm telling you, if I had a camera to see like all the kids in here, and I have to pry the food away from when I ask them, listen, can your daddy get something? Can your uncle get something? They look at me like this. You ain't ate? I bought the food, but hey, I try to get it in the breaks, and make the best with it.
They look delicious, so next time we'll have to virtually share some tacos here.
We're gonna be virtually sharing food. Like, can you smell it?
I can actually. I can see it on your plate, and I was like, man, that looks and smells delicious. Moving forward, we got so much to get to coming up in the final hour, including name, image, likeness, meetings in front of Congress today with Mark Emmert of the NCAA about that. We'll get to the very latest there. The Autonomous Five, you know them as the Power Five conferences, have put out a statement on the legislative hearings today there in Congress. We'll also look at the 12-team playoff that may be brought up for not necessarily adoption, but it will be brought up by the subcommittee to the college football playoff folks next week among various models on playoff expansion. So had it been expanded already, who have been some teams that would have benefited from that and likely won a national championship that didn't otherwise? So a lot to get to with that. And of course, we're counting down towards Braves and Phillies. Of course, Hawks and 76ers coming back to Atlanta later this week for Game 3. That series knotted up at 1 game apiece. So no shortage of things to get to in the final hour. Ben, is certainly name, image, likeness, playoff talk going to dominate the college landscape next couple of weeks as they are immediate agenda items. And name, image, likeness, something's got to be potentially done prior to July 1 when some of these states have their own laws becoming enacted.
Yeah, Mark Emmert found himself in hot water today. Kevin, because when you look at the fact that he was in there answering a question that had nothing to do with name and image likeness, and then you talk about this young Hawks team who they got a different energy. Kevin, we was already thinking there was going to be more Knickerbockers in the stands than it was Hawks fans, and they end up, the Hawks fans came out. They did come out in support, but and the Braves, look, do what you've been doing. I don't want to jinx it because every time we inch close to the 500, they get ass. So, Kevin, whatever you ate yesterday, eat it today. Whatever you did yesterday, do it today, because we need to get back to 500. Because bigger than the fact that they keeping pace in the NL East, I need them. I don't want that losing column to have more, that winning column.
Sure, and I believe the Mets were losing last night, so the Braves actually made up some ground last night and a chance to get above 500 if they heaven forbid if that happens. But you'd hate to put all this work to get to 500 and go right back below that 500 mark tonight. But you got Tucker Davidson, the young rookie, going tonight in this series. So another guy who's getting his chance to try to go out there and prove he belongs to stay. And again, that's what sports is all about, Ben. Is a young man, it's like, hey, it's your turn. We need you. It's your moment. Now go out there and prove you deserve to stay. And to me, that's why we watch sports, is wait for that opportunity to come. And when the opportunity comes, grab hold of it.
He got his teammate right there on his team for moral support. Got Ian Anderson. Say, Ian, when did you get called up? Oh, I had to go against the Yankees. Okay, what was your second star? Oh, the Red Sox. Oh, what else? Oh, I had to pitch in the playoffs. So you got a guy that literally got brought up in crazy situations. And dare I say, Kevin, outside of maybe a couple stars, has not underwhelmed and has definitely been definitely lived up to the billing to this point.
Yeah, certainly. And we'll see if Tucker Davidson can be another one of those guys to kind of step in and fill his role. Again, we appreciate Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina, joining us here on 3 and Out, and certainly very intriguing talking to him and where his program's going. Ben, as this is a team that's got 19 of 22 starters coming back here in 2021. A lot of potential. They've got Kansas coming to Myrtle Beach. They have a favorable schedule to get things started out. I think 4 of their first 5 games are at home here in 2021. So this is a team that's obviously got an opportunity to continue what they started in 2020 and not be that one-hit wonder.
can they deal with being hunted? I mean, because last year, obviously, Kevin, they was walking around taking out everybody you put in front of them when you having the season they had last year, going undefeated in the regular season, beating BYU. But now, App State, like, I don't like not being talked about. Louisiana, I don't like not being talked about. Georgia Southern, once they get their QB. Georgia State, Arkansas State, South Alabama. So they had a great season in 2020. But you know how it is, Kevin. The hardest thing is, can you do it consistently? Can you do it back to back?
Certainly. We've got more to come. Final hour of the program. We're talking name, image, likeness, playoffs, Hawks, Braves. Braves getting ready for the Phillies. We'll catch you up towards that second game of that series here in hour number 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Final hour here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, so much to get to here on the show, including some 12-team playoff talk. That what if we'd already had this in place? Could we have seen some different national champions? I think we might have a little bit, but certainly name, image, likeness. If you're a college athletics fan, at the forefront, Mark Emmert with the NCAA sitting in front of Congress today, talking about name, image, likeness. And BJ and Ben, just the last little bit, got a statement from the Autonomy 5 conferences. So that would be another way for folks to just make it easier. The Power 5 conferences issued a joint statement after the hearing today on name, image, and likeness. They said this: the Autonomy 5 conferences thank Chair Maria Cantwell and Ranking Member Roger Wicker for today's hearing and their determination to set a fair and enforceable national standard on name, image, likeness. Only Congress can pass a national solution for student-athlete name, image, likeness rights. The patchwork of state laws that begins on July 1 will disadvantage student-athletes in some states and create an unworkable system for others. As leaders in college athletics, we support extending name, image, likeness rights in a way that supports the educational opportunities of all student-athletes, including collegians in Olympic sports, who comprised 80% of Team USA at the Rio Games. We continue to work with Congress to develop a solution for name, image, likeness, and expand opportunities. Basically saying what we all know. Listen, July 1's right around the corner, and you can't have a system where some states have passed laws that start July 1. Some states have passed laws that start 2 years from now. Some states have laws that start in December. Some states have laws that start in September. Some states have laws that start in 2022. Can't do it. And they're saying, look, Congress, and this is probably their way of standing behind the NCAA, Congress, you do it, and we'll support you in what you come up with. That seems to be the crux of the statement there from the Autonomous 5 conferences.
Kevin, you should write releases, man. All right, here's what we're going to do. Look, this is, I mean, I like that breakdown, but yeah, this is going to be something where you have a federal mandate, right? Where you have a federal kind of cohesive set of guidelines that everybody's going to adhere to. And the set of circumstances you were referencing, that would have been unsustainable. And I think that was known from the beginning, right? Like when we first started to move in this direction and you saw states were setting the tone by trying to essentially force the NCAA's hand and kind of create widespread momentum for change that has been needed. And the NCAA reached the point where they realized, yeah, this is not going back. This is going to happen. And I don't know that they've had the ability, the desire, the kind of consistency to tie all this together and sort of have a comprehensive package. And like you said earlier in the show, Kevin, I think now they're sitting back saying, okay, it is what it is. The federal government is going to set a new standard that's going to apply across the board, and that in some form or fashion had to happen because, to your point, you were not going to be able to sustain a system where you had laws in Georgia that were different in Florida that were or potentially different in Texas and California and Ohio. That would have been incredibly volatile just in terms of trying to address the various rules and regulations for student athletes depending upon where they played. That would have been impossible. So you're moving forward with what will ultimately be a set standard that Congress makes a law, and then that will be the new standard. And I don't think that'll be the final kind of evolution of this. I think we're going to see name, image, likeness, kind of student athletes, what a benefits package may be, or student athletes' rights. I think that's going to continue to grow and expand, but this will be the new standard, and it will apply across the board.
And rightfully so. But the thing is, whenever you don't create something, you have to abide by the, whatever these rules and regulations are. That's not what the NCAA is used to doing. They're used to writing their own narratives and being able to, and they write it in with a pencil so they can add and subtract as they please. Well, now this is the thing that Mark Emmert and NCAA is fearing. Bigger than the fact that they're gonna say, well, federal government came out and did this. It's gonna be some things that they are not gonna like. And that's what you put yourself in a position in when you just want to be at the party. You didn't throw the party. Now, I think it is a step in the right direction. And I know the NCAA is going to do their 2 cents about adding stuff in. But there are going to be some things, because, Kevin, something we talked about. You go into congressional hearings or what may have you, people that, I don't know, don't watch college athletics.
Well, I mean, I just look at it and I agree that we knew this day was coming on some way. And I know Mark Emmert said today that the NCAA is on track to pass some kind of rules by July 1, because again, if this goes with it, it's the equivalent of the Minnesota Vikings letting the draft clock run out. And it's like, okay, you didn't do anything. And now the other teams are running as hard as they can to go, make their draft pick known. Well, I'm sorry, if Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and, a lot of these states in the South have stuff going into effect July 1, athletes are going to utilize that. And then folks in California, who I believe when their law was written, they might have been the first to pass name, image, likeness, BJ. And it was, I think, 2023 is when it goes into effect. You're going to have a lot of kids going, wait a minute. So student athletes in Georgia and Florida and Alabama can go out and make money off themselves, like a normal person. But I can't until 2023. What? Why is that? I mean, it would have been absolute chaos. And it still may if they don't get something done, because those laws are on the books, ready to go in those states we mentioned. So, I mean, I think from all the statements you've seen, it is the NCAA kind of throwing their hands up saying, we can't do this, you do it. And I mean, when you come out and say, look, in the statement, it said the only one who could make the national law is Congress. Well, you're the NCAA. What's the first word in N? National. You are the National Collegiate Athletic Association. You can make a national rule with which your student athletes must abide by. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. Some of the wording in these statements that we get out here by what we can and can't do in regards to student athletes and name, image, likeness. Only Congress can do it. Then what are you there for? I mean, it's just crazy, and I'm interested to see what happens. I'm all for the student athletes being able to monetize name, image, likeness, but I do agree also, if you have 50 sets of rules, that's hard to administer. That's hard to oversee when you're having to go through every series. Like, well, they were in Georgia. Well, what about a kid who's from Georgia but plays in Texas? Can he go home for the summer and make his cash in Georgia and not abide by the rules in Texas? I mean, it is going to be nuts if you don't come up with some kind of overarching kind of guidelines. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. It's happening, whether you like it or not. And there are merits to say why it's good and maybe some why it's bad, but it's happening. And the NCAA and Congress had better act quickly, because by my quick look, you got 3 weeks? 3 weeks till July 1. Is that right?
No, you're right. I mean, you're right with kind of how this has evolved. And I do agree the NCAA has not been proactive, I mean, to say the least, in terms of trying to get in front of this, trying to come up with a comprehensive plan or a comprehensive model that could have been a standard. And because you had state-by-state developments, you've now reached a point in time where there's going to have to, as I said, be a national mandate, a national standard that is basically going to obviously supersede any NCAA thoughts and is going to be the new model upon which amateurism is redefined. And I think Kevin, would you agree with this? Ben, would you agree with this? That it kind of started as the state government's forcing the NCAA's hand, and then once we realized this was going to happen, the NCAA maybe didn't have a plan for how to move forward with it. And now, Kevin, to go back to something you said earlier in the show, I think they are sort of deferring to / leaning on / wanting Congress to now do it and kind of set the standard, and then the NCAA just steps back and says, okay, that is what it is. But they had an opportunity to get in front of it, and now the federal government is taking the lead.
This sounds like the Big Ten in 2020 trying to figure out if they're gonna play or not. Remember when we thought that the Big Ten and the chancellors and the commissioners, everybody was on the same page, and then they shut down football, and then they wasn't gonna have football, and then they came out and somebody said like on a Sunday afternoon, oh, Saban's gonna come out, they're not gonna have football, and the commissioner comes out and somebody says, "Isn't your son a tight end for Texas A&M?" See, the NCAA is good at bringing down infractions on players. That is what they're good at. Oh, a player messed up, player X messed up, messing up eligibility and all this. I don't know how much power the NCAA had. I don't know how much power Mark Emmert had, but they're gonna show their hand to where, like, dude, what do y'all really do? Well, we collect checks, and we got a commissioner, and we're good at telling the student athletes this big old thick book called guidelines. That's for the student athlete. That's not for the coaches. So now, Kevin, when you talk about now, they're gonna get a book. And the front of it's gonna say law. This is written into law. There's nothing y'all can do about this. And all I'm saying is, I don't know a lot about law outside of the fact that if you break it, there will be consequences. And I think that Mark Emmert got back to his office today, and it was like, dude, what you there to do? What did you do? I was answering questions. Like, he didn't do anything. So all I'm saying is, just because you got a big position don't mean you got power that come with it. Mark Emmert showed that today. He's just there because he had to be there, because he probably would have summoned him if he wouldn't have come there. So I think now, Kevin and BJ, it's going to be chaotic, and NCAA has nobody to blame but themselves, because they had time to get, like Kevin just said.
Well, to that end, I wanted to get both of y'all's perspective on this. To that end, had the state governments not gotten this ball rolling, do you think the NCAA ever would have done it on their own?
No, absolutely not. Mark Emmert looked about as uncomfortable as you've ever been in his life. I mean, no, Why would they do that, BJ? Because if they number one, that makes it seem like they care about student athletes. They don't. Makes it seem like they care about student athletes' well-being. They don't. And I'm sorry, they got the right rules. Mark Emmert don't know about none of them rules in the guidelines of the student athletes. As far as NCAA rules and guidelines, he only knows when somebody's name come across his desk and they broke an NCAA violation, which is a lot. By the way, what happens when they can make money now? Are all those rules obsolete? Do all that stuff? Because that's what people don't realize. So if I can't break the rules,
great point.
Does all that stuff? So do they got to go back and rewrite their rules because of what Congress does? Mark Emmert, you done messed up. I'm telling you, you messed up today, but they had their shot. I don't feel bad for them. You make too much money to make decisions. It's like, listen, if you can't shoot free throws at the end of a basketball game, you deserve to lose. No different than if you can't run a 2-minute offense, you deserve to lose. That's what they pay you for.
Yeah, I mean, I think, no, the answer to your question, BJ, is I don't want to say it's a solid no, but it would have been baby step after baby step after baby step to get something in place. And I think, look, where it's gotten to now is you've got to come up with policy now in 21 days to have your student athletes in states where things are going to be allowable to go by. So I think that is obviously a tough thing to do. And I think when you go to Congress, as Ben said, I mean, quite frankly, I say this a lot, but people in Congress probably have far greater things to worry about rather than coming up with name, image, likeness policy, quite frankly. And so I think that's why you get, as Ben said, people who are detached from how college football, how college athletics are run, detached from how the money is dispersed, detached from how conferences have worked their own deals, detached from how all of that works. Now we're going to write policy for a system they don't know a lot about. And that's why you get things like, hey, What if can we just do health care for everybody for the rest of their life? No, wait, we're talking about name, image, likeness for right now, sir. It's like, that's how I think if Congress gets a hold, it's going to end up being everything other than name, image, likeness when it's all said and done, potentially, which could have good and probably more downside to it if Congress gets involved. But I think that is the fear for me if I'm looking at it is you have people who are about to put policies in place who probably, and rightfully so, haven't spent a whole lot of time seeing how college operates. Because to come up with a policy, BJ and Ben, you have to come up with a policy that works for people at Florida as well as Florida Southern. You have to come up with a policy that works for Georgia as well as Valdosta State, because they're all NCAA. They can all go out and name, image, likeness, but they are in vastly different situations athletically as far as the numbers, as far as what the opportunities potentially could be out there. And I think that's where you run into very interesting trouble writing a universal policy that fits across the board, because there's so many drastic different situations that student athletes find themselves in from a marketing standpoint, from a visibility standpoint, and things of that nature.
Oh, and Kevin, and the thing about it is, so it sounds like you're saying that Congress has to write in a policy that benefits everybody. Who would have thought? I'm just, and no. Think about that though. Think about Kevin. Think about what you just said though, Kevin. Forget being detached. They don't even know what it is. Like, I don't even know what this is. You know who Trevor Lawrence is? No. Do you know what Clemson is? No. Well, it's in the name. It's in Clemson, South Carolina. I think now this is usually what goes on when you talk about writing the laws. They're usually detached, but they're usually talking about things like infrastructure, things like that. Now you got to write into law for amateurs. For 17 to 24-year-olds that you've never seen, never met, will never see, will never meet, will never interact with, you got to write something in the law. Good luck, Mark Emmert. You had your shot to do this, and you didn't do it. Sometimes, Kevin, but that's how good the NCAA is now, Kevin. That's how much money is being made. I don't even want to do it. I'm going to let Congress do it. All right. But when you're dealing with workers' comp, guys getting now when you can't play, do we get paid leave? He couldn't even play this week, because that's what Congress gonna be thinking is they didn't even hear the part. They're not employees. Are they independent contractors? I'm just saying.
That's why I think it has the potential, BJ, to go off the rails from just name, image, likeness, which is to me just a basic fundamental of, look, yeah, you play football, but outside of that, unless you want to come with some arrangement and say, hey, we are using each other to promote ourselves, what's stopping me from going out and earning? Basically, let's talk about what it is. I want a side hustle. I'm going to play football. I'm going to play basketball. I'm going to play baseball, but I want to be able to go out and earn on the side off of myself. So if people know who I am, even if they don't, if they know who I am because of other means, great. Allow that possibility to do that, because I think that's allowed in just life in general. It's like, hey, if you come up with an idea of a way that can make money for yourself, do it, as long as it's legal. I think that is one of those things that's going to get very interesting for Congress to get involved with.
Yeah, and I will say this, in terms of the evolution of name, image, likeness, and kind of student athletes and amateurism, I don't think this is the end. I think this is the beginning in terms of sort of the new role of the amateur student athletes. So what we're seeing is going to be the catalyst for a lot of change, I think. Yeah.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll certainly see what comes out of the congressional hearings today, because a lot could happen in 3 weeks in regards to that. Also, playoff talk on the docket next week for the College Football Playoff Committee. But what if we already had a system in place that was expanded? Would we have seen some different national champions? We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're making us a part of your day. Got a comment about the name, image, likeness stuff from TJ Johnson there on Facebook. Don't you guys think Congress has to get involved with name, image, likeness because most of these big universities are funded by taxes? That's an interesting point, but not relevant in this case because name, image, likeness applies, at least in my opinion, to the individual, not the school. And if you look at the way the laws are written, especially in Georgia, let's use JT Daniels. JT Daniels cannot go out and say, "Hi guys, I'm JT Daniels, Georgia quarterback." JT Daniels cannot stand in a photo wearing a Georgia shirt. He has to be JT Daniels, I'm JT Daniels, the end. So the agreement we're talking about for name, image, likeness technically has nothing to do with the schools. And TJ, the schools want it that way. Why? Because this way they're not employees. They're out there doing their own thing on the side, not using the school name to further themselves monetarily. And so, no, I don't think Congress has to get involved with this at all. It's all about the individual, nothing to do with the school necessarily, other than the school and NCAA allowing them to monetize themselves, essentially.
Now, I do think if you see a further evolution of the student athlete, maybe something like that comes into play in terms of the relationship between the student athlete and the school and stipends and money. I mean, who knows? It could get really complex, but I think it's currently constituted. What you say, Kevin, makes sense.
Yeah. I think Congress, they just want them to do it so they can have a national policy in place for them to follow. But no, they don't have to get involved. Because it's supposedly, if that's what we are talking about, it's about the individual student athlete and their ability individually to go out and earn off of their name, image, likeness, not using the school's image and likeness when they do so. So for name, image, likeness, whenever you hear that, just imagine everybody is severed right down the middle. So if you're thinking, JT Daniels, name, image, likeness. No, it's JT Daniels is over here. Georgia is over here. Never the twain shall meet when it comes to name, image, likeness, at least at this point, because you open up a whole nother can of worms if you come to an agreement where students market themselves as JT Daniels, quarterback of Georgia. But that's not what we're talking about with these new laws presently.
Congress had to get involved for the simple fact that the NCAA still look at these student athletes as amateurs, and Congress obviously doesn't, because if it was, why were we trying to make laws for them? Ain't no way you're going to make me believe. And the thing is, the NCAA, look, we already benefited from these dudes. We're not going to help assist them in benefiting themselves. Why would we do that? No. So, because if that's the case, BJ, Kevin, they would have been done that, right? I'm not going to help you. I want you to help me. So I think that Congress got involved, but when Congress gets involved, Congress knows Congress speak. They don't know NCAA. They don't know name and image likeness. They know we're writing something in the law, and they thinking generationally. How could this benefit the generation? Well, I don't know. But I know that right now, as you mentioned, Kevin, if I can pull JT Daniels out of a transfer portal, but yet I can't help himself by making a couple of dollars, thank you, Congress, for doing what the NCAA was never gonna do. We were gonna be 75-year-old, 80-year-old men saying, man, they finna do name and image like that. What's that? Exactly. We don't even know what channel we watching. Get out of here, man.
But yeah, I wanted to respond to that. Thanks, TJ, for the question there regarding name, image, likeness, as it was dealing with Congress earlier today. We also still to come next week. The subcommittee going to give a bunch of different scenarios to the College Football Playoff Committee. Apparently, the one that people like the most is the 12-game format. But guys, if we had a 12-team format already, would Alabama have won as many as they have? Would we have seen some guys who didn't win a championship win a national championship? I think, BJ, there's some teams out there that can lay a big claim, especially when you're talking about the BCS days when it was only two that got a chance to play.
Yeah, the first team that comes to mind for me in terms of a team that was left out of a championship game is 2004 Auburn. And, of course, it's incredible. They went undefeated in the SEC. And for a quick refresher for their schedule, beat number 4 LSU, beat number 10 Tennessee, beat number 8 Georgia, beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl, beat number 13 Tennessee in a rematch in the SEC championship game, then beat number 9 Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, that was a squad. And you're talking about a team that was perfect in the toughest conference in college football. In a time where the league was just as good. The fact that they didn't get to play for a championship was crazy. And I think if they would have been in a multi-team postseason format, they would have been something to deal with. Listen to some of these names. You had Jason Campbell, obviously at quarterback. Listen to these running backs, not just Ronnie Brown and Cadillac Williams. Let me give you 5 running backs. Ronnie Brown, Cadillac Williams, Kenny Irons, Brad Lester, and Trey Smith, all on the same roster. And, of course, Ronnie and Cadillac, one of the great duos ever. You're talking about Marcus McNeil, a future All-Pro on that offensive line. Ben Cooper Wallace, who I believe you played with in the NFL, at tight end. On that defense, you're talking about Jay Ratliff, Quentin Groves, Carlos Rogers, your former high school teammate, Ben, who won the Thorpe Award, Junior Rose Green. I mean, that Auburn team was something else in 2004. So that's one of the teams that comes to mind for me.
I mean, for me, BJ, I was gonna be biased and put, a couple of teams I was on with the game. 2001 teams I was on they was incredible. But and they probably would have had a chance. But them 2000 Hurricanes, see, we talk about that 2001, right? I played against. Well, I saw them. I was there. Them 2000 Hurricanes, BJ, to me, they were the best team in the country that year, even if they didn't win the national championship. I just think that when you look at that roster, Ed Reeves and Benny Blades and all, Jeremy Shockey, Ken Dorsey, was throwing the football, but you had Santana Moss, Reggie Wayne, oh my God, Andre Johnson. You wasn't moving the ball on that team. But, two teams that, I don't know if they would have won it, but they would have got in. 2014 TCU and Baylor. They would have gotten in because that would have awarded each year. Each conference is going to be different as far as who's going to be the cream of the crop. That was egregious. When they didn't get in, people were like, whoa, because you thought at least one would get in, BJ. But here's another thing too. I don't know if they would have won it. 2019 Georgia was pretty good. They was pretty good. When you look at they lost to Alabama. In the SEC championship game, but that's going to happen to most teams, SEC championship game or not. But I just think that when you 2002 Georgia, right, lost one game.
Whoa! While we're on that topic, why didn't 2002 Georgia get to play for a national championship? For all the Dog fans who would love to revisit those memories.
Unforeseen circumstances. Things happen, BJ. It's hard to go undefeated in the SEC. And the only team that can really do that is 2004 Auburn, 2019 LSU, and obviously 2020 Alabama. Back in those days, sometimes you had to take that pep. You had to just take no. I was blessed enough to catch the game with a touchdown pass in 2002, but I just think that BJ, we talking about the teams nobody's going to disagree with. I think this is put in place because. How many times would Boise State have made the college football playoff if this was in place? Every other year, and I just them West Virginia teams that had Slayton and those guys, Pat White and those guys. I'm just saying, I know that Alabama wasn't Alabama then.
Okay, you're talking about teams. What about 2017 UCF with Mackenzie Milton? And just a quick review through their schedule. They played a Power 5 opponent in Maryland in week 2, won 38-10. They beat nationally ranked Memphis 40-13. They beat nationally ranked South Florida, scored 49 points in that game, beat Memphis again when they were ranked, scored 62 in that game, and then beat Auburn 34-27 in the Sugar Bowl. That team would have been something.
All I'm saying is I know we get caught up in what Alabama's doing now. Alabama, maybe listen and think about this, these ramifications. If that's in place, do Nick Saban ever leave LSU? He may never leave. Because Alabama is half because Alabama, half because who's coaching there. I'm just saying a lot more teams would have got in BJ to be able to continue. Because like I said, when you talk about 12 teams, those 4 teams that get those byes, they're at a disadvantage because you didn't play the week before. The teams that played football is rhythm based. So yeah, you're gonna have a lot of teams.
I think you think about the dynasty teams, and I think Shane Matthews mentioned this when we interviewed him, is if you go back to the 90s or the 80s, how many championships would Nebraska, Florida State, and Miami have won if there was a playoff every year?
ridiculous.
It would have been amazing to see, needless to say, and we may be getting it in the distant future, the not too distant future, I should say, as the subcommittee going to present a couple of different options to the College Football Playoff Committee next week, and maybe move towards potentially voting on an expansion scenario. And again, some reports are that a lot of people favor the 12-team scenario for the College Football Playoff. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday, leading up to Braves and Phillies game 2 of that series. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Braves and Phillies coming up here in just a couple of minutes. We'll have coverage for you. Tucker Davidson gets another start against Zach Eflin. Again, we'll have afternoon baseball as they wrap up the series tomorrow. So Braves with a chance to go to Philly, hopefully win these next two games and get a series sweep. But Tucker Davidson gets his latest chance, BJ, to try to stay in the rotation.
Excited to see what he can do. He's been really good. ERA around 2.5. I think he's had some issues with walks, and that may be the key for him is don't give up those free passes. And if you give up a hit or two, you move forward. And like we said with Smiley gave up a home run yesterday, but it was a solo shot to Bryce Harper. If you give up a solo shot, that's something you can deal with. You give up a 3-run homer, that's a little bit different dynamic. So keep guys off the base pass, those strikes, and I think it'll be exciting to see what this young man can do.
Hopefully, hopefully he's getting advice from his teammate Ian Anderson on how to just go out there and just be yourself. It's unfortunate that these guys are in this situation because the starting pitching has been anything but what we expected to be going into this season, Kevin. But look, you got plenty of experience around you to be able to try to help you go out there and be yourself. Those strikes. Don't throw balls. Don't let guys get on base, without having to be competitive. And hopefully, by the time they go to that bullpen, you go in there with a lead, which definitely helps starting pitchers go out there and pitch better.
And maybe we'll see Ronald Acuna just continue doing what he does, man. And he's tied for the league with Vlad Jr. And I mean, the dude is just absolutely amazing.
Wasn't that one yesterday? Wasn't the homer yesterday 460 feet?
Yeah. I saw one that said that he's on pace for the 50-30 club, so he could have 50 homers, 30 stolen bases, which is just incredible for a young man of his experience. And again, BJ, you and I were talking. He has got almost 400 hits and 100 and just short of 100 home runs. So it's like 25% of every ball he puts in play goes over the fence. That's crazy.
At leadoff.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a bright future ahead for that young man, needless to say. And Austin Riley has become quite the power hitter right there behind him as well. So Braves and Phillies coming up. Tucker Davidson against Zach Eflin. We'll have coverage for you here momentarily. And tomorrow, 1:00 afternoon baseball will join you following Braves and Phillies tomorrow afternoon. So looking forward to that. Appreciate Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina, joining us here on 3 Now. If you missed it, go to ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel for the daily podcast here of 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.